So, Kathleen, a few years ago, Eaton Vance acquired Calvert, well known for responsible investing. And I know part of your job has been integrating the ESG team from Calvert into your team at Eaton Vance. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it was the end of 2016, and Eaton Vance bought Calvert. We were all very excited and had gone down to visit the group down in Maryland and got to know the portfolio managers. On the fixed income side, two portfolio managers, Vishal Kanduja and Brian Ellis. And in talking to them about their approach, learned that they have an active strategy that is geared for performance. And then they have expertise within the Calvert enterprise that looks into ESG. So it was a really good fit in that our team up in Boston has active fixed income strategies. So to go from, at that point, what was a relatively small group at Calvert to come into the larger group at Eaton Vance in Boston, you had many more resources. So we benefit from Calvert's expertise in ESG and the work that they do, and their investment team has access now to a broader group of fundamental analysts. So we began the process of integration.
So it goes deeper, right, than just bringing two groups together. So talk a little bit about how you're actually, what do you consider true integration?
That's an excellent question, and I'm going to give you my answer, but just as with investing, there is no necessarily one right way to do it, that we're really into new ground here. But for us, what it meant was learning about what the risk factors are and thinking about fundamental analysis and how you evaluate risk and return. How do they come together? And I think it's somewhat similar to investment teams where there are key components, whether it is the portfolio manager who has market experience and traders who are on top of what's going on in the markets, and then analysts who are experts in the areas that they cover. You need to bring all of those together in order to make a good investment decision. There's also the macro side. So there's an area of expertise, and so it's the collaboration of learning how to work with each other and understand what are those risk factors for ESG and what are the important drivers within a particular industry, and can we speak in a common language? On the fixed income side, the dark side of bonds, which I love, there is a credit language that people speak, and you become very comfortable with that. So it was learning the language of those different sides, knowing that the ultimate goal was to provide a good return for the different risks that we are taking now.
So let me ask you this, and some people in this room may not like this question, but why isn't it as easy as just retraining fundamental analysts to deal with ESG?
Well, I think that goes back to the pieces of the larger pie, that we don't ask portfolio managers to do the research and do the trading, that it's really it's a team effort, and you have to recognize and acknowledge the areas of expertise. The work that we all do is hard to uncover the best opportunities and to think differently about the markets. So you have to respect what those different contributors bring to the entire effort. So with the macro piece, you're looking at people who have an expertise in the big picture, and your analysts tend to look at the smaller micro elements. And so with ESG, it's identifying the risk factors and also recognizing that they change continually. So how can you stay on top of it without having experts? And so what we've done is aligned the ESG experts with the fundamental analysts by industry. So there's a common language and understanding of what each does, but they each have a perspective on what is important from their particular lens.
Right. So like I said, you have been on this path for a few years now. Compared to when you first started, what have been some of a big surprise that you learned?
A big surprise. Well, what was interesting, I think, was that with Calvert, there was already integration and a comfort level with doing it together as a small team. And I think what was surprising is how we are all so passionate and interested in our jobs and what we know and sharing that, that bringing a small group into a larger group and sharing that knowledge, you have a cultural aspect that you're dealing with team members, and finding your way so that, investments at the end of the day is really about managing people's money, and so you have to have some trust and rapport with that, and it's very important that the people working together understand and respect that. Mm-hmm. So it's a holistic process, and I think that's always what I've enjoyed about the industry, and this is just another level of being able to bring that process to a new level.
What advice would you give to people that are just starting out on this?
Well, it's not easy. And I know that just from my own personal journey, that of the many hats that I wear at different times, I do some volunteer work, and I'm the chair of an investment committee for a nonprofit for a faith-based group, the Unitarian Universalist Association. And what's interesting there is that there are two committees, an investment committee and a socially responsible, that advises, with the investment committee making all the decisions. And we are currently working to integrate so that we can integrate under one investment policy. And it is a struggle because you have, and I see both sides, the fiduciary responsibility that has been ingrained in me over 3 decades, and that fight for achieving strong returns with what is important about making the world a better place, and is the world changing? And so it's that you have to be open and listen to both sides, because both sides are right. It's not unlike what's going on here in the US and around the globe. It becomes very difficult to listen to the other side and understand what they're saying. So it's not easy, but when you have a shared goal and you know what that is, you can get down to work on it. And so it's really been a very interesting experience in thinking about that and melding it together. And I think that was probably a big part of why integrating the Calvert team into, on the fixed income side, our team at Eaton Vance, that has been satisfying and really interesting work.
So, Kathleen, you've mentioned a few times just ESG risk, and I know that they're changing all the time, but I am curious, what are some that are here to stay, and also, can you identify what you see as an emerging risk?
It is clearly emerging risk, and this is probably the toughest question to answer, and I'm not I'm not an expert. Our folks at Calvert are the experts. And I have a view, but the risks are we're still trying to articulate them.
Yeah.
I've been in the industry for a long time. I've seen the way we articulate risk change over time. And we are into a new frontier where we're trying to define what those risks are. Now, SASB is an authority that is guiding those of us working in ESG in terms of what is the best practice from an accounting perspective. But in terms of the risk tools, the risk that you won't achieve your objectives in ESG, a lot of what's behind what's going on today, and probably why we're here talking about it with Refinitiv as the sponsor, but is the data. That now that we have so much data available to us, one, it gives us information to measure, but two, it gives companies and countries who are thinking about what they want to do a way to set targets and a way to look at the data so it can be more rational. And I think for me as an investor, understanding your goal and why you're doing it, that having some empirical data and some rational support is much easier to bring into the investment process than purely judging it based on values or negative screening.
Sure. So my last question, and I'm asking this because I'm a serious journalist and you're a very serious fund manager. If you had to come up with the name of a Netflix series based on your experience over the past few years of merging these two groups, what would that name be?
Well, we're certainly into a new frontier, so I'm thinking futuristic and maybe Star Wars, but if I think hard about it, what I'm enjoying about it is the way it's shaping how we look at the world, and how about a remarkable planet?
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Kathleen Gaffney. Thank you.